Hey, Utah Mammoth fans, tusks up, and welcome into your Utah Mammoth Daily. So, first thing I want to clear up is timing of these videos, when they're recorded and how they're uploaded. So, these videos usually go out the day after I record them. So, if you're watching a Monday episode, I probably recorded it. In fact, I most likely recorded it on Sunday. That's just the reality of balancing schedules, editing, and making sure you're getting something polished and ready to go. It also gives me time to gather all the final stats and reactions without rushing a late night upload, and it gives me time to digest. So don't be thrown off by me talking about yesterday's games. You're always getting the most recent action just on a slight delay. So now, let's talk about why we saw two games in one day between the Mammoth and the Avalanche. Preseason split squad doubleheaders are testing grounds. Coaches want to maximize reps. Front offices want to evaluate over 60 players in a short window. Instead of dragging it out over multiple weeks, they run two groups. One lineup plays in one location, another lineup plays in another, and then the coaching staff gets to see the tape. They get double the tape. So it's about finding out who can keep pace, who can mesh with the NHL talent, and who still needs some seasoning. For a franchise like Utah, especially with all the young talent that is in the pipeline, that process is even more important. You need to learn your depth inside and out. And let's just say the depth isn't looking very good in a pipeline that is rated in the top 3 in the NHL. So game 1 was a disaster. It was a 5-1 loss. After going ahead 1-0 in the first period, nothing went right for the Mammoth for the rest of the game. So it was brutal. The Avalanche barely broke a sweat, and from the opening puck drop, Utah looked out of sync for the most part. Michael Carcone did have that good goal, but breakouts stalled at the blue line, turnovers piled up, and Colorado jumped all over them. Gavin Brindley, Tristan Nielsen, and company showed what happens when you give skilled forwards time and space. And in the NHL, pretty much everybody is a skilled forward, so they'll bury you. The penalty kill was shaky too, with Avalanche skaters setting up shop down low like it was a practice drill. By the third period, the Mammoth were chasing shadows. You could kind of tell the youth was showing through there. Yes, preseason scores don't count in the standings, but the manner of the loss matters. It showed Utah's young roster just how high the standard really is. Colorado is the standard bearer for the Central Division and have been for a while now. Andre Tourigny and his staff now have the tape to circle and show where the kids need to improve. The kids now know the speed of a true NHL game, as close to a real one as you can get without getting in on the opening night roster. And it could show every lazy back check and missed assignment. So if you're a player on the bubble, that first game didn't do you any favors, and a lot of those guys were the PTO guys. So not a good look at the first game. But in the second game, there was a good response. It was a 3-2 battle. It was more of the senior lineup rather than the backups or the depth, the PTOs, the youth movement, what have you. So the nightcap at Ball Arena was a different story. The Mammoth battled hard in that 3-2 loss, and while it's still a defeat, the energy and structure were there. They clogged lanes, they forced dump-ins, and they killed off a dangerous 5-on-3. 5-on-3 that could have put the game out of reach. That's what you want to see in preseason. Not perfection, but progress. Veterans like Brock Nelson and Colorado's top 6 all had their moments, but Utah's response told you a lot about this team's pride. They didn't roll over after the matinee disaster. They saw what their teammates did, and they went, well, at least that wasn't us. They forechecked, they blocked shots, and they played with a lot of pace, which is kind of Utah's game. If game 1 was a wake-up call, I don't know if it was a wake-up call so much as, hey, this is what could happen to you. Game 2 was a statement that the Mammoth can adjust, and the senior team is more together and more NHL ready than the younger guys. It's the kind of competitive loss you can actually build from, and it's the kind of competitive loss that gives fans encouragement that maybe they're not so far off. So after that 5-1 loss, I made sure I looked at the rosters to see who was playing, and that 5-1 loss was definitely a lot of the younger guys and some of the Russians coming over. But the 3-2 loss was more of the senior team, and more of what we're going to be seeing on a nightly basis with the Mammoth. So don't take too much from that 5-1 loss. It was kind of embarrassing, but it's going to happen with the young kids. And then the 3-2 one is much more closely what we're going to see when the regular season rolls around. So what do we have to look forward to for the rest of the preseason? The new collective bargaining agreement isn't here yet, so the preseason isn't going to be short. It's still, I think, a little too long, but here we are. So let's move on to that and a little recap of my favorite goal from those two games. It was the Daniil Boot goal. Of the 3 goals Utah scored yesterday, that was the prettiest one. It was a really good singular talent moment and showed what Daniil Boot is capable of. It was silky smooth. He took the puck at the circle a little bit up, a little bit towards his own goal in the circle, and dangled it through the defender with quick hands, pulled it forehand to backhand, and tucked it past the goalie with calm precision. The game wasn't moving too fast for him in that moment, and he just showed off why the Mammoth picked him. That's why Utah brought him in. He's a 6'5". He's 6'5" without skates. So he's a big kid, and with that kind of skill with the stick, he's a unicorn, or he can be a unicorn. You don't see many players with that frame glide through traffic like he did, although, to be fair, the Avalanche defense was not really set up. But, I mean, still, to be able to do that on an NHL, in an NHL-ish game is really impressive. So it was a glimpse of the future, and the fans in Denver got to see what kind of star potential Utah is cultivating. And there's a lot of star potential with all those first-round picks that Utah has coming through the pipeline. Let's not kid ourselves. So, big picture. Split squad days are always messy. I mean, they were so messy, in fact, the first game had to be delayed because Utah couldn't get to the arena in time. So that's kind of embarrassing. Kind of like when they were in, I think it was Toronto last year, and they had to walk to the arena. It's a little embarrassing. You know, hiccups of a young franchise. Let's just leave it at that. So the Mammoth learned how far they need to go to match contenders like Colorado, but they also saw flashes like Boot's goal that prove they have real skill to build around, and they have real skill on the team. Preseason isn't about wins and losses. They are nice to have, those wins, but it's more about what the lessons the young guys learn and the lessons the coaching staff learns from the players they have, making adjustments and moments of brilliance that show you the path forward. And on that front, Utah got plenty to work with. Lots of good tape for the young kids. Moving forward for the rest of the preseason, there's the game against the Ducks, then a game against the Knights, 2 games against the LA Kings, and then 1 game against the San Jose Sharks before the regular season puck drops for the Mammoth. So I will continue to be keeping the pulse of the Mammoth during this preseason, seeing what's going on. I don't anticipate very many wins in the preseason, but that's not the goal. It's just it's time for Andre Turgeon to be the mad scientist and put some stuff together. I don't anticipate seeing very much of guys like Clayton Keller, Mikhail Sergachev, John Marino, Karel Vejmelka. I don't see the need to play them outside of the game against the Sharks and maybe in the games against the Kings. But that's what we have today for your Utah Mammoth update. Today, I said today twice there, and I'll see you tomorrow.